Hey there, how are you? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I was having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Can you hear us now, though?
I can.
All right.
So Barbara, I know shortly after I started, I know we had a conversation in one of one of your visits here, more about the operational aspects of our relationship with Rockland and less about the kind of investment mandate and investment performance. So we're hoping to get a similar overview and, starting with a focus on sort of cash and cash moving between Rockland and the town. So for example, a question was raised where when we approve a disbursement, we're basically signing a disbursement request for the town's accounting system. And then, at least you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the town's bank account is issuing a check. But ultimately, that's a disbursement from one of these funds. So if you could walk us through how it gets from us signing off and the town writing a check to a withdrawal from the trust fund, from the investment account.
Sure. So we've been doing it this way since we've opened the account. So basically what happens when disbursements are made, you're correct. They go out of the town's accounts. And then at the end of the quarter, I receive information from Elise and that group as to what was expended during that quarter. And at some point, I wire the money out. In the past, we waited until after the end of the fiscal year just to make sure everything tied out to the books. I think they're better at tying out the books now on a quarterly basis. Elise can correct me if I'm wrong. So I think what I would like to do is actually, once the quarterly report is done, is to actually say, okay, I owe the town X amount of money, and I would wire it to the town account.
So that is the process now, or that's what we're moving
That is
for?
not that is not the process now. It has generally been done at the end of the fiscal year, which I don't necessarily agree with because we're holding on to the money longer than we should be. The money's already been expended by the town. And I can
Right.
tell you, every other city in town, they send me disbursement requests and I disperse it at the time they make the payment. So again, I can basically do this however you want it to be done, but at a minimum, I would like to send the cash that's owed out at the end of the quarter.
So whose decision do you think that is?
It just depends
That,
where we with the reconciliation and kind of squaring things up on our side. So correct me if I'm wrong, Barbara, but I believe it would be our side, treasury and accounting together.
Right. So currently, just to confirm, fiscal year end is June 30. Right?
Mhm.
So sometime in July, presumably, you're getting a report from the town, the treasurer's department, saying these were the total. This is the total of disbursements through the year, and you're wiring money to the town's bank account out of the investment account.
I'm actually now getting the information on the disbursements on a quarterly basis. Before it was more towards the end of the year, but now on a quarterly basis. At the end of the quarter, I receive the receipts that they've booked. And those they do send me on a regular basis. So I just confirmed that what they said they sent me, I actually received. And then in that same file, it does say what they dispersed over that quarter. So I enter that into the report. And then that becomes what I owe the town at the end of the quarter. And then I just keep track of that on a quarterly basis. So I think for ease of reporting, I would like to have the town confirm that once we go back and forth and everything is proved, we're both on the same page, that I actually send the money out on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
Okay.
Would that work for you, Elise, if we change that to do it on a quarterly basis once we know everything's okay?
Yes, I think once we're in a better position, that would be excellent if we could do it quarterly rather than annually. I know for certain accounts as well, we're trying to do it monthly, but I think quarterly would be best, in this situation.
Does the,
And
is
then
the
the
town,
only other reminder I want for you, Elise, and I can resend this if you can't find it, is I'm gonna need that wire agreement completed before I can send any future dollars. So do you need,
Yes,
resend it?
Yes, please, thank you.
What changed that a new wire agreement needs to be in place?
There's no, we never required wire agreements before, so it's a new compliance on our side to make sure we have a wire agreement in place.
Sure.
so I'm just curious, is the town's account also with Rockland?
No, well, not the monies that I send, no.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so we do have some accounts with Rockland. We have 73 bank accounts. So we have,
Whoa,
yeah. It's,
But
A
not the
common
one that's
feeling.
writing the
You and me
checks
both.
for,
yeah,
but the account that we're writing checks out of is not with Rockland.
correct,
So they're replenishing that account
yes,
by wiring from the trust account. Okay.
to Eastern. We have an Eastern bank
Got
account that is our vendor account, so.
And then the trust fund account, is that just one account with Rockland? And how do you
Yes.
guys track just the balances of each trust fund specifically? Is it just a spreadsheet?
yes, yeah, it's an allocation spreadsheet, so on there, we keep track of the disbursements and the receipts, and then we allocate to all of the funds our fees, change in market value, and income and dividends.
And then for any disbursements that occur, are you essentially assuming that they happen on the last day of that quarter? Yeah, in
Oh,
other
from,
words,
from the, as far as, no, I'm assuming they're happening at the beginning of the quarter.
okay, so if a disbursement, so if we make.
No, I'm sorry, end of the quarter. So I'm allocating based on the beginning of the quarter's balances. I'm sorry, which
Gotcha.
is how it was set up way back when.
So, I mean, this is sort of my day job. If you think of it like a private fund of some sort, or a hedge fund or a mutual fund, they're striking a NAV at the beginning of a quarter, and then assuming that any disbursements that happen during the quarter are happening at the quarter end.
Yeah. So,
That's
so by holding money till the end of the quarter, it is earning a return, even beyond after we've written the check.
You could argue that it's a small amount of leverage happening as a result of that. But I think it's small enough that it could probably be ignored.
Yeah, and it's kind of coming out of the Needham accounts. Like, because Needham is having to wait to get their money, whereas we are holding on to the money. It's just the quarter timing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And
I have
then-
more questions. Go ahead with yours, but.
So it's been a while, I think, since we got a new trust fund coming in, but would it essentially, how would that happen? Like, so if a new trust fund came in, it would fund to the town's bank account? I mean, I don't think it's happened actually since you've been.
It hasn't,
It doesn't come up much.
happened. Barbara, do you recall, would it be a wire coming in, or is the check written to the Rockland account?
Sometimes it's been a little bit of both. So in the past, I think the money has come into the town and then the town has wired it to us. I also think that in some cases, whoever's doing the trust fund has written a check to the trust fund and the check comes directly to me. It isn't even washed through the town's account. So
Okay.
all I can say to that is it depends. Truthfully, it's whatever's easier for the town.
Okay, but both are possible, both.
Yes.
And then,
You're just asking about donations in general, right? Like, where do donors send money?
not so much a donor, but if someone were specifically to set up a trust fund.
Oh, like a new trust fund. Okay.
Right.
But donors today, are they doing both as well? They send money either to the town or directly to the trust fund?
So
Generally, I get checks. I get checks. So I think what happens is I think that they come in and they give checks to the town and then the town turns right around and sends them to me.
Okay, so they can just get deposited straight into Rockland.
That
Unless
probably
it's
makes
an online.
sense.
Yeah.
Unless it's an
So
online.
it goes straight into the trust fund account.
Okay. Thank you.
You had some questions about how Rockland tracks dispersible amounts versus non-dispersible amounts. I forget what terms
Yeah,
they
sure,
use on the
sure.
spreadsheet. Why don't you ask your question?
Sure. So Barbara, you're up on the screen over here, but you see me looking away.
That's,
It's a little bit tricky.
that's okay. You're looking at me when you're facing this way. I can see your face.
So I'll try to manage this. I actually have two sets of questions.
Sure.
The first is, I think, shorter, and it has to do with the terms that are used on like the big spreadsheet that we get
Yep.
after the quarter. And so the thing I want to understand is the column that is titled non-expendable balance and the column that's entitled expendable balance. And I just want to tell you what I think that means is the non-expendable balance is like the historic dollar value, the initial donation, and the expendable balance is what comes after, or is it different?
No, you're really, really close. So the expendable non-expendable balance are any principal donations or anything where the donor has said that here's $100,000. You cannot spend the $100,000, but any earnings on that $100,000 will be used to cover X. A lot of times it's scholarships or whatever. So what happens is we take that $100,000 and then we would allocate all of the dividends, interest, net out the fees and change in market value, and that becomes the expendable balance. So the
Okay.
expendable balance is just the growth in the earnings that have accumulated over time as that can be expended.
Okay.
So in
Okay.
theory,
So
if we had
that
a
gets-
newly created trust today and its market value went down, in theory, and that trust specified that the original amount could not be spent. In theory, they couldn't spend anything until there was some
Correct.
positive balance.
Correct.
I think when we had the market crisis a number of years ago, Massachusetts law was changed to allow you to go into the historic dollar value, but luckily I don't think that's a concern for us. We're not
Right.
facing that situation. So here's my next set of questions. And so thank you for explaining that. It's very clear. Each fund presumably has sort of a spending rule that applies to it. So that not all of the interest and dividends and gain, since it was created with a principal donation, that isn't all something you can spend in a year. Is there a spending rule that applies to each of the fund, like 4% or something like that?
That is something for you folks to determine. We always recommend that you come up with a spending rule so that you're only expending 4 to 5%. And in a lot of cases, what you can do is you can take a rolling valuation, meaning you go back 3 years and say, give me the market value for each end of the quarter. And then you average it out and say, okay, you can spend 5% of whatever that average is. What that does is it allows for the fluctuation in the market. Because if you do it statically and say, okay, it's 5% at 12/31, well, if it was a great year, you can do a lot. But if it was a bad year, then the next year, the difference in what you can spend would be could be dramatic. Whereas if you use a more smoothing mechanism, it keeps it pretty within that 5%, and it shouldn't. It should hopefully go up every year, but it helps maintain for market value swings.
Okay, so if there is a spending rule that has been applied, that isn't something that Rockland gets involved with.
Correct.
That's something that the treasurer and team would be keeping track of.
Correct.
Okay, so if in approving invoices, we're bumping up against, let's say, the spending rule for a year, we would determine that within Needham. You all would just be calculating whatever spent outside of the balance and no relation to what a spending rule may say.
Correct.
Okay,
Now, if you decide that you want to, number one, do a spending rule and you want to do it on that rolling quarters, we can certainly do that, like calculate out what the rolling quarters in is in the end of every quarter, say, okay, here's what the average is. I do that for another town. I can't remember off the top of my head who it is right now, but we do that.
okay, so you could
So
support us.
we could track that if you wanted rolling quarters, we could track that for you, absolutely.
Okay,
And so what would happen, I guess, if we approved an invoice that, exceeded the expendable balance? So Needham writes a check, it uses up an expendable balance. What happens at that point?
At that point, it would overdraw the expendable balance.
Okay,
But that.
And that has happened before. There are instances where money has been paid out and the expendable balance ends up in an overdraft, but then eventually money comes back in and it replaces it.
okay.
Now, if there's a non-expendable balance, the earnings of that would ultimately help replace that.
Oh, okay, even in that circumstance, you don't take from the non-expendable balance, you're just.
No,
Okay.
no, we just leave it in an overdraft and let the earnings on the expendable balance keep getting applied to that, or there's a donation or something comes in and fixes it.
Okay,
for those trust funds that have as part of their governing documents income only,
Mm-hmm.
what spending rule tends to apply to that kind of fund? Is it 4%?
Yeah, so this goes back to what you just said about allowing trust funds that 100 years ago were set up as income only to actually spend that 5% rule. And so, and again, I don't think any of your funds, I haven't looked at it, but my guess is you're not even anywhere. You have healthy non-expendable balances.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a little bit of a conundrum. That's a little bit of a conundrum. But you've got, but you would use it's not just income only. In my mind, the change in market value applies to that. So you get dividends and income, you net out the fee, and then the market goes up a certain percentage. That market growth is part of the dividends and income. So it's not quite strictly dividends and income, particularly when, income was at what, 0.01% for interest rates for a while. So the change in market value does help to boost that income.
I don't know that I would interpret it that way. I think if a trust document said that, income is expendable, I would interpret that as, interest and dividends without regard to changes in market value.
So I think if there's a law, the acronym of which is UPMIFA. Do you ever deal with UPMIFA, Barbara? That has to do with institutional funds. And it does say that for an account that is income only, it really can mean not just strictly dividends and interest if you're taking distributions, that you can go into principal a bit so long as you have a good reason and a reasonable spending rule. And that's why I'm kind of like hyper focused on this spending rule.
Right.
And that allows you to go beyond the rigid dividing line between interest, dividends, and gain and whatever else exists.
Yeah, and I can tell you, Rockland Trust is actually a trustee on a lot of scholarship funds, and we do the gains and losses and everything are attributable to income. We're more to that 5% rule.
Okay, so 5% is a rule of thumb in your.
That's usually yes. That's usually what a lot of I see between 4 and 5, because they say if you use 5%, you'll never run out of money. I don't know that anybody's tested that over the time to see if that's really true, but that's what they say.
Empirically, they call it the 4% rule, but what's 4 versus 5? It's hard,
Yeah.
right? And then that's been around for a long time. And I think it works reasonably well. Back to your point, Andrew, I mean, it begs the question of if we're approving a disbursement,
do we need to know
should
the
we
balance?
check on the balance as of the most recent date that we have it? just to double check that, maybe with the exception of the library, because it's a huge trust and it's constantly paying small invoices, right?
Mhm.
But if it's from something other than library, maybe we should just take a quick look at the balance and make sure we're not in danger of overdrawing it.
Mhm.
And then the other thing, Julia, to your point, is that it seems like at some point this group must have put together a summary of all of the spending rules of all of these trusts, but I don't know that I've seen it.
Yeah, see what I'm envisioning.
Barbara's shaking her head.
And I've never seen one. I've never seen one either, so.
You're the best institutional memory we have at this point. You've worked with us
Exactly.
longer than I've
Exactly.
worked with us.
Well, and I can tell you, in most cities and towns, some of these funds are probably so old that finding records is probably really, really hard. I do know, and again, with the treasurers and everybody with so much else on their desk, this is not a top priority as to finding what the rules are for each trust fund.
Yeah.
The good news is that, you've seen, if you remember Joe's old black binders that look like 737 flight manuals, right? We've scanned them all, and we now have access to them online, so we could quickly reference one in theory
Yeah.
during a meeting if we needed to. Or we could do a project to just go through them all and make a spreadsheet. It's hard, it's surprising that hasn't been done. Don't want to replicate an effort that's already been done at some point.
See, I have this dream.
Yeah.
My dream is that somewhere there's a spreadsheet or whatever that has each fund, what the spending rule is, and what the amount is for the year. That we can then approve invoices for and work against,
Mhm.
and know if we're exceeding it. And that to me would be the best organization.
I'm gonna
Yes, I would
send,
agree, and I could also say that if you want to open up a consulting firm and say that you'll go into every city in town and look all that information up, you'll probably be a millionaire. I might do that in my retirement. Listen, I'm coming in and I'm gonna get all your trust funds in order.
That's right. That's
So
right.
the spending rules that apply to both disbursements and,
You're
Trust
a
fund,
meeting after yours, right?
yes, with Dave
Yes.
Davison. Okay, I'm not sure where
It's
he is at the moment.
hourly,
Okay,
not to worry, it's air conditioned.
Okay.
perfect, thank
when we
you.
talk about the spending rules, so does that cover both like disbursements and expenses, like scholarship disbursements and expenses, whatever you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
is that any money coming out of the fund, like kind of goes against a spending rule? Is that the right way to think about it?
Well, I think, yes, that's the way to think about it, that no matter whether you're considering it an expense of the fund or a scholarship, or per the terms of the fund.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
one thing, our expense is netted, the fee for the account is netted out of your earnings.
Mhm.
Does that count towards the spending rule as well?
I would say not, because we're reporting net earnings.
Okay. Okay.
And it's board directed, so I think the board has the right to determine, like within reason, what's in and what's out.
The board of the trust?
Like the commissioners, sort of
Oh.
like the board.
Oh,
of
of
the
the,
trust funds.
okay, gotcha. All right. Well, it makes sense that it would all be included.
But I'll check with accounting. I already did, but I'll check again with accounting to see if they have a spending rule and a maximum per
Yeah,
year.
like a
So,
ledger or
yeah.
something.
Barbara, is there anything else in your experience with other towns that you see that you like that we're not doing?
Truthfully, what I would like to see is if you made a disbursement, that you actually make a request and I disperse it at the time of the request.
in other
Because
words,
then, like you get checks and you send them to me. So if after a monthly or even on a monthly basis, you just say, here's everything that was expended, please send us the money. Instead of having to carry this line item on the accounting that there's X amount of dollars that are owed to to the town.
Okay. Okay,
So what does that look like? Are towns, like on a daily basis?
Not so much on a daily basis because trust funds don't move as much and that many transactions. But I can tell you, like in May, every town is paying out their scholarships. So I would get an email or a form from each of the towns, and they would say, "Okay, please send me $10,000, and here's how it breaks down." And so
Got
we
it.
send them the $10,000, and then when we do the accounting, it's broken down in that month's accounting.
Got it. So you'd prefer not to wait for the, quarter end reconciliation, et cetera.
So that's not really, I mean, it sounds like that's not really our group's decision, but that's more
No,
of an accounting function, like if you
I
guys
think
have.
that's more, of a lease thing. And,
Yeah.
and again, and I can tell you that what I'm doing now is way better than I was doing years ago. So
Yeah.
what's happening now is a vast improvement. So I will give kudos to Elise and her team that it is much
And
better than it
accounting.
was before.
yeah,
It's tough to
It's a
turn a
team effort.
battleship.
yeah.
Yes.
That's what she's working on. I think when you write up the minutes, this is an interesting point. So I would note that we discussed it, but then
Yeah,
concluded that it was really something for, the treasurer's department and Rockland to work out among themselves.
yeah.
It's good to discuss. For
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. We should know how it works and we can have an opinion, but I agree, it's kind of an operational thing.
And again, I will do whatever is easiest for the town. I've always said that. And if this works for the town, again, we're 100% better than we were. That would be the only difference is I'm not making payments until after the quarter end, whereas I would be making them all along as they're requested.
If I could flip his question for just a second, what are we doing that you'd prefer we not do? Are there things we're not doing well?
No. Well, I can tell you there's 2 outside accounts. If you could close those outside accounts and give them to me, I would appreciate that, but I'll let that one slide because that's another, I have to add all of that information into my accounting. But other than that, no, I have no complaints.
I'm the newest, so I'm still getting up to speed. I get to ask, rookie questions. So what information do you provide to us? Do you give us monthly reports or quarterly reports? I just don't know yet.
So I believe we send you monthly account statements, which is just here's the fund, it's worth X amount of dollars, and here's what happened during the month. But on a quarterly basis, I do the accounting that actually provides you the breakdown of each of the individual funds.
That's
So have you gotten these yet?
I might have it in my inbox, but I'm not. Okay, that's the statements.
Yeah,
And then the spreadsheet is, you guys, Rockland provides that spreadsheet, right?
quarterly.
Okay.
And Andrew, if he's not added on the statements, I forget, how would we go about adding him?
Oh, Andrew, that's your name?
That's me, yeah.
If you could, Elise, if you could email me his contact information, so I would need his name, address, and email address, and I will set him up to get statements and,
Okay.
Yeah.
I will, do you mind if I CC you and?
Yeah, and then I
provide
can
her
just send it.
information?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
And then my experience, it's usually been about twice a year, we have Rockland come in person and we, review the investment results in
Yeah.
detail. And that's kind of, how has the performance been? What's their outlook? Talk about the investment policy statement, if they have any thoughts on that.
Yeah.
So
Sounds
I
good.
think we did that.
In
We did
December,
that
right?
over, I was gonna say February sometime, so maybe we should schedule that for our September meeting and we could talk through the performance through June 30. Does that make sense, Barbara?
yep, we can certainly do that. I will be retired by then, so you can reach out to Dave Schiller and,
Well, this is a little bonus here, because I thought you were gonna be retired already, so.
Yeah, we're excited.
yeah. No, my retirement date is August 31st, so
Oh, it's coming up.
Yeah,
it is coming up. It is coming up. But I will shoot a note to Dave to make sure he reaches out to you to make sure that we're on the agenda for, what, do you already have a date for September?
I have September 8th at 4:30.
September 8th at 4:30. All right, I will get that on their calendars and let you know if there's any issue with that.
So I'm looking at some notes from the last meeting when we were thinking of questions to ask you, Barbara. And one of the notes I have has to do with the Nina Pankis Fund, where checks are being written on the account by the donor. I'm guessing, Barbara, you have, that doesn't involve you at all. It more is a Needham question.
Mm-hmm. I did follow up. on
Okay.
that one. So
Okay, so we
that's
can,
Wells
we don't have
Fargo.
to,
Yep.
okay.
Right, so.
Yeah, and the other thing on the Nina Pansik, I think that's the one that's a separate fund. But I've always treated it as if it's part of the whole pie. So, because I was never told it was actually a separate fund. So I don't know if that's an issue.
Yeah, I see it on the spreadsheet.
It is on the spreadsheet. So if money goes out, I take it out of that fund. But when I get the statement, I take any earnings and fees and all of that and allocate it like I would every other fund. And I do the same thing with Wells Fargo. So I think, yeah, I don't know if Wells Fargo is Nina Pansik or if
Oh,
it's the
that's one,
others.
that's what I put.
So are
Okay.
you, just,
Thanks.
this goes to a question I was gonna ask. So are you overseeing more than just the one Rockland Trust kind of omnibus investment account?
No, as far as the investments go, I don't look at those other accounts at all. I just bring them in to add them into the earnings and all of that. But I do not look at what's in there. We don't do anything with those.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say we can't take a look at them, but is it the school department, Elise? Somebody else runs those funds.
For the which ones? Nina
Sorry, hang on,
Pansik?
just one more second. So you're getting statements from other bank accounts which are, and you're incorporating them into this spreadsheet and into our balance? Okay. So
Yes.
if I were to try to tie leave it open a crack.
Just a little, because it's technically public.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did the same thing. So
That's why there are signs out there that say be quiet, because you're not actually allowed to, you have to keep one door
Got it.
open.
Okay.
So if I were to try to, let's say, tie out the spreadsheet as of a particular date to our Rockland Trust statement, it wouldn't tie. And
Correct.
the difference would be those couple of extra bank accounts that you're incorporating into the spreadsheet.
Yeah, and I only get the statements at the end of the quarter. They go to the town. They just send them to me to incorporate them into the reporting.
And those statements are in the name of the town or in the name of the trusts?
In the name of the town, I believe. Well, one of them, I think the name of the town.
I
So,
can check.
so any investment.
One of them might say Nina Pansik on it because it's Wells Fargo, and I can't remember the name of the other firm off the top of my head.
But it does reference the fund on there for regardless. So it will say, I can't remember if it does say Town of Needham on the top or if it just says Nina Pansik and then the treasurer's
So
name.
it's like town for benefit of trust?
It would just say Town of Needham, Nina Pansik. So there's usually two lines.
But when you're looking at the portfolio, Barbara, that account
Mhm.
isn't part of the portfolio. Like you're
Correct.
not reading, okay, that's, I think, an issue.
Yeah, we're not looking at the investments of those. We're not doing anything. We're just
Right,
bringing them
right.
in. We were never
That makes-
charged with that. Yeah.
Of course, I mean, that makes complete sense from
Yeah.
your end.
Yeah. And then,
Have a list of those, Elise, or would we be better to get that list of those accounts from Barbara?
So it's on the spreadsheet, so it's on, Barbara includes it on the spreadsheet, but it depends on what you're asking. Are you asking about the scholarships? Because those really are in Rockland. The only ones that I'm aware of are the Nina Pansik, The Bank of America also has one, but technically we're not in charge of that. We only get a disbursement from that account.
I'm sorry, what is the Bank of America account?
The Bank of America account, I'll have to get the information. I believe it's Elizabeth Garner. But it's just a disbursement, so there was a legal case and we identified that one. And Barbara, can you recall another, would there be anything other than the Wells Fargo account?
Yeah, so the Invesco's another one. I've got copies of the statements right here, so I was pulling them up to see if I could see what they said on them.
Invesco,
The Pansik is with Wells Fargo, we're saying?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so Invesco says Garrett Cullen Scholarship,
Okay,
and I don't believe any money's ever come out of that account that I can recall. And then Wells Fargo must be the Nina Panzik account.
I can ask the school, that sounds like a school account, the Garrett. What did you say, Garrett?
Cohen?
Cullen?
Oh, I thought you said Garrett Cohen, I'm sorry.
I may have.
I thought you said Collins.
What was
Cullen?
it?
I think Cullen.
Oh, Cullen. I do recognize the last name.
Wait, Cullen, that's funny.
Cullen, I think. Cullen.
And then Wells Fargo does say account name Panzik on there, but it comes to the treasurer.
Mhm.
So if we were to write checks out of the Pansik account, then we would let Wells Fargo know?
That's the one I think they do it themselves directly out of Wells Fargo. Because when we get statements, I've seen where disbursements have come right out of it. So I don't know who's directing that. Do you, Elise?
No, so it's a bit of an oddity. We're still waiting on feedback from the school regarding the Nina Panzik scholarship and the kind of the trust. Usually if it's regulated outside of the Treasury Department, I usually don't see it.
Okay.
But it's been kind of like a point of are we supposed to be seeing this information if we have no role in dispersing it?
But I'll flip the question around, if we've been designated as I don't know if you consider us the trust, yeah, we're the trustees of a trust, and we're supposed to, in that capacity, we're supposed to approve disbursements, and we have someone else who just has a checkbook who can on their own make disbursements, is that, going against the sort of operations of the trust document?
So I basically had presented it to the school. I reached out to Wells Fargo, I reached out to the bank and said, hey, could you tell me more about these disbursements that are being made? It's being made by the person who opened the account, and we're still waiting. It was very recent, so we're, waiting on.
Is there a
something.
balance maintained over time? Like, is it just
Yes.
cash that's just sitting there?
I honestly
No,
am not sure.
No, they're both invested. They both have investments in them.
Okay.
And back when I had to do book accounting for this account, it was miserable because there was funds that didn't have cost basis, but now that it's on market, it's much better.
Yeah, we need to understand responsibility, I think.
Right, and maybe we could start, I could pull up the trust document for that trust and we could take a look at it.
And I would suggest you do the same thing on Cullen too, because Cullen, as I said, I don't know that I've ever seen any money come out of that Invesco account. I think it's just sitting there. So, but I think if I remember correctly and now I'm going back to Evie's time, so this was years and years ago, she led me to believe that the school department had something to do with both of these funds and there was no way we were gonna get our hands on it.
I think that is
And again,
Fitting.
I don't much care. It's just one more step for us when we do the accounting, but, and maybe it's a case that we should take those scholarships and put them below the line and let them, and just take those statements and apply the earnings to those accounts directly to those two funds and take them out of the Rockland monies.
Oh, so I might have missed this. Do you apply the earnings from those two accounts across the whole fund and then you do your allocations?
Yep,
Oh, that is a little messy.
yep. And I've done it since day one. That's how I was told to treat them all, as
So
if they
that-
were in one pot.
So whoever's controlling those accounts is either making investments themselves or perhaps has even hired a professional investment manager to manage those accounts. And it's outside of your purview, but it's getting incorporated into our total, $10 million
Yes.
portfolio. Okay.
Yes. Yes, and but the other thing I can tell you, well, I don't pay as much attention as I used to, but nobody's really trading on either one of these accounts. Invesco for sure.
So then most likely it's not being managed by a professional paid.
I think
advisor.
that would be my guess if you had to ask me. That would be what I would say.
Usually a brokerage statement would say at the top, if there's an like our statements, I'm sure would say managed by the Barbara Howard team or whatever.
That's so interesting. So,
And whether it fits within our investment policy statement, we don't know that.
yeah.
So.
Right.
So even though like the Panzic account it's the only fund in this account, what's on the spreadsheet isn't going to match what's in the bank account because the allocations are kind of are mixed, are commingled.
That would be correct. That would be correct. We would have to do some counting. So the Neener Pasnick the statement has a value of $228,000 as of March 31st.
And the spreadsheet is going to be different, 228. Do you see that account on the spreadsheet?
I do, and let me just see something. It has the balance, the total market value, just looking at that, on here says 135,000.
So they're bad investors because they're getting.
So I don't.
So
Oh, no, wait, the
interesting.
allocations are bringing it down, but you're saying the actual money in there is a lot higher.
It is a lot higher.
Oh, so they're good investors. It's not getting allocated to them.
It's hard to square that.
Yep. It is hard. It is hard to square that. So the only thing I can think of is that, and again, we may want to do that. I'm going back to, this is what I was told years ago. And then the other account on Cullen has $145,000.
Yeah. Okay, well, this gives us something to do.
It would be simpler. It'd be a lot simpler if we somehow could get approval to put these two funds into Rockland.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is, if at all possible, is somehow, I don't know how we would reconcile that other account as far as the spreadsheet goes. I think we would have to take whatever differences between what our spreadsheet says and what their statement says and take it from the other funds, because we've been giving it to the other funds over the years. And let them just have it. Like, you guys just step out if at all possible. But I think to your point, if you're charged as the trust commissioner is in charge of all trust funds, then I think you need to be accountable for it.
Okay.
So do you know who we talked to about, like, who is in charge of those two accounts?
I think if the commissioners first review the documents and get a sense of maybe, I don't know if it would be written into that, but I don't know. We can ask I can ask the assistant treasurer collector, because she's been here for many years, so she would probably have a better sense of if that has ever happened and if it could happen. And she can also check with Evie, the previous treasurer collector, to see if it has happened in her lifetime.
I'd like to read this more, but there's some correspondence in this file from 2006 that refers to there being a Wachovia account where they wanted to change, they wanted to, I guess, add the treasurer as signatory authority over this account. And there's some debate and discussion about the role of the trust fund commissioners. Like one person said that they should be in charge of it, and then says, to be clear, they're not in charge of it. So there's some, we should read it.
Yep.
I don't want to come to a conclusion now, and I'll nominate our resident attorney to read it.
I figured that. That's fine. That's fine. Actually kind of interesting.
Can you all access the box.com folder now?
To say that it was the school department. So it had to have been somebody at the school department that somehow running point on these, and I don't know which one it was, but that was always Evie's answer. It was the school department, which is why it wouldn't be commingled.
Okay. I think I can get
I'm
that.
pretty sure I do have it. I saved the email, I just have to go back to the link.
And
Okay.
the individual who, I don't know off the top of my head who it would be, but the school department might have also been a part of rolling it over to a different account or something like that, so I can check.
Okay.
Start with the assistant treasurer collector and then
Right,
see
so
where it
there's
leads.
other correspondence in here, so as part of it coming under our purview, they had to change it from a scholarship that was only for women to one that was gender neutral, and they had to amend the trust document because that violates gender discrimination rule that applies to us, so there's a whole file here.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah.
All right, are we good to let Barbara go?
I feel, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Right,
don't wanna let
awesome.
I don't want to let her retire, but
I know.
Well, I'm retiring 2 or 3 weeks short of 47 years with Rockland Trust, so I think it's time.
Wow, congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank
Do
you.
you know who your replacement's gonna be?
Yes, it's going to be Dave Schiller, and he was at the last meeting with us.
Okay, got it.
And then and then Heidi Bastick is the administrator on the account, and then Greg Rando, who you haven't met, is going to be the one taking over the accounting, but he does the accounting for all my cities and towns, so he's an expert at it.
What month do you retire? In August?
August 31st.
All right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
so
Brian-
Elise, what you're gonna need to do is make sure at the end of 6:30, we move this right along, so I can work with Greg and make sure we get everything done before I go.
Perfect, okay, can do, awesome.
Awesome,
Brian,
and I will send you out that wire agreement, so it's at the top of your inbox. I won't do it probably till tomorrow.
Okay, and then I sent you one for Andrew to get the statements to him, so. I
Okay,
already did-
perfect.
All right.
Brian stays on
Awesome.
our account for the time being, right?
Say that again?
Brian remains on our account on the
Yeah,
investment
Brian,
side?
yes, Brian's not, I'm sorry, yes, Brian's not going anywhere.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right,
All right, you are very welcome. Enjoy the rest of your
Thank
night.
you.
Enjoy your
Take care.
summer,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Thank you.
okay, we set a date for September. Do we want to set a date, or did we set a
still
date for
have
October?
to, so I have the agenda, we
Yeah.
still have, all right,
We have
so,
disbursements to approve.
yeah, I don't know if everyone can see this, but, Rockland Trust meeting, review and approve minutes, which you had already done, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and then, treasury updates, there's no new updates for me. Review and approve invoices for payment and scholarships from trust funds. So there is the invoices, and I don't know how it was previously done,
Mhm.
but we do have so there's two things, the scholarship sheet I was sent from the school, And I don't know if you usually just sign off on it or what the
I'd like to take a look at it.
procedure is. And I also have one with the accounting, the general ledger account, so I don't know if you want those as well. But that's fine. And there's one that I highlighted, and they were approved for financial aid. Thank you. They're approved for financial aid, and they'd like to defer the payment. So if you see one highlighted, that's because the individual, it would impact their financial aid if they did receive the scholarship this year. I believe that's the reason why.
So what do we need to approve?
Good question.
Also, I have this batch. Oh no, this has nothing to do with scholarship.
So we can maybe start with the invoices,
Okay.
and then we'll move over to the scholarships and disbursements.
Okay.
Uh,
A lot of kids going to University of Wisconsin in Madison. It's so funny to see all that
Yeah,
popular this year.
Today's 6/20. Julie, here's one. Sorry. Where would you suggest I sign this, Elise? Just right on the front cover?
yes, please, yeah, so if you stamp it, and then just sign it on the front.
For me to sign?
I think so.
Yes.
And this is approving an invoice?
Yes. So that one, I think we had signed last time, if that's the same as before, the,
Oh, this
You have to-
NCRTF?
yep, yeah, G&L Landscaping.
Is it, oh, it's the same invoice?
It's the same invoice, they just batched it together, so
Oh, okay.
we didn't get funding, and then, we did,
Oh.
and I was just going through the same process to keep it consistent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then this one is for,
That's the school. Yeah, so this is the Needham Revitalization Trust Fund.
and then this one?
That is the school department.
Oh, the school department. Okay.
And these two, I believe, are library.
getting better at the throw.
Yeah. Usually I throw it and then it goes straight down.
Oh, there's 2 for the library?
There's 2 for the library. Sure. So 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I mean, my initial just observation, I guess, with this process is, like, we don't know anything in terms of who these vendors are and like what it's for and is it the right amount. So it's like, ideally, in an organization, like, there would be somebody like on the ground at these places that are also signing off,
Mhm.
and then we get it and we sign off. Just
Aren't they, isn't that mostly the case? Like in the library, they have a whole,
and maybe that is the case.
Sign-offs.
Maybe just the fact that it comes to us, it's already been
Yeah,
approved.
for the
but-
library, the redundancy is quite,
Yeah, I
or
remember you
like
guys mentioned
Paul
that.
Good usually
Yeah.
signs off on all his.
Yeah, so library, yes, school, yes. I think the NCRTF, I don't know as much about, so maybe Paul, I know it had been requested in a previous meeting, maybe inviting him in to discuss his process with the revitalization trust fund. But yeah, we are kind of, or the
But-
commissioners are trusting, I suppose.
Right,
The due diligence has been done.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember you guys actually kind of answered that, or addressed that last time. All right.
All right, so I'm not sure if last time when the scholarships had come up, if there was just a motion to accept the scholarships as presented. I'm not sure what the proper procedure is, if you sign off on the page or,
These have already gone out, right?
so they have not processed it until the commissioners approve it.
Got it.
But we've already approved the amounts.
Back in January,
Yeah.
yeah, when Ann came? Okay.
And the students have probably already been informed, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, they must be if this one is saying that
Oh.
he's,
That's true.
I think they have there's a time in May, I think. when they
Yeah,
all
it's like
get it.
during class day or something, I remember. I remember I got like a $500 scholarship when I was at Needham High.
All right, so I'm gonna sign off on this and say, approved, with this one award deferred
Okay.
as requested.
Okay, and then there's also the Domestic Violence Action Committee. They also do a scholarship, so there's the school piece, and then there's the DVAC. So this is just kind of bundled with that. So
Let's take them separately if we can.
And they also included the email that I had received.
It's interesting, there's some sizable scholarships.
The 28,000.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then this is the DVAC.
So there's a cover letter, which is now on the bottom. Why aren't our meetings that fun?
Yeah. We don't bring snacks, I think
Oh.
that's, yeah.
So this is a scholarship?
Yes, so I believe one of them was a scholarship and then also
A stipend, yeah.
stipend, yeah.
Okay.
And I spoke with accounting about it, so they were aware of it. Thank you. Then you said the September after. Should we do the additional meeting?
Projects for next time. Julia, will you review the trust document for the Pansec scholarship?
Yes.
Okay. And then, Elise, you'll work with Barbara if necessary to kind of get a better sense of what these accounts are and who's accessing them, and
I think,
I don't want to just instantly jump to something's wrong, because probably per Evie's point, they were probably set up in that way at that time for some reason. Maybe it was right or wrong, but someone probably had a reason at some point.
I will have a conversation with Diane to see if kind of like a rollover to a new account had been done in the past and what the procedure would be if that's the direction that we are able to go in. And also I can see, well, I think it's a conversation I need to have with the banks as well. Who opened the account? Why did you open the account? You know, do you have supporting documents? I've already requested.
In general, like
banks,
what,
so.
with respect to the trusts that have access to these accounts, what is our role per the legal documents, and should there be other people with the ability to just make disbursements aside from this?
I feel like these are two different things. One is like the stipends, whatever, and this is a scholarship up to a person who's not mentioned here. And there's also, it's a Ms. Geyer, but then it says Mr. If you can, sorry. Here's the other.
And I did have a conversation with accounting about the payment, not the scholarship, the stipend.
I didn't reconcile the name back and forth between the two.
And looking at
So wait a minute,
notes, when they came to talk to us, we did approve the $1,000 scholarship.
Stipend,
Yeah,
okay. The
Just not
stipend or
the scholarship,
The scholarship.
because Bigwood is Bigwood is what we talked about.
So,
And increasing the amount, I do.
so should we I know we all just signed this, but should we kind of put a pause on this until we just make sure the names are straightened out? Because we don't want to be issuing.
Well, I think those are stipends for work on that video.
Yeah.
And then the other is a scholarship from the Bigwood Trust to that young woman.
Mm-hmm. Is the Bigwood Trust.
Yeah, so
Oh no, this wouldn't be on here. So
I don't know if the commissioners do need to sign off on this, because I had a conversation with accounting about the stipend, not about the scholarship. And I believe it was in the process, so I'm
So
not,
these are two very different things, but we're okay with approving the two stipends.
and I can
And
check.
I'm okay
And we
with
just
that.
want to know what is the, you know,
I mean, this is the last,
this is
This
attached
is-
to this letter, find a copy of the letter from Aaron Seacott, but we don't have that letter from Aaron Seacott.
I also think it's important to keep in mind that we're not meeting again until September.
Right.
So is there any reason not to approve this scholarship?
You mean these stipends?
Uh,
Well, there's
Well-
nothing to approve. Like, we don't actually have the letter from Principal Seacott asking us to do anything. This is just a cover letter.
This,
Mm.
what's the amount here?
It
1,000?
doesn't say. Doesn't say.
So what I have in my notes is that when we spoke to the folks from DBAC, they were seeking 4 disbursements. They added up to 32,400. And one of those was, I guess it's for quarters or years or whatever, 8,100. And in my notes, it says they give one scholarship $1,000, which is within the 8,100.
Pretty sure I did see this name. And I'm not gonna say the name out loud, just because this is a public meeting.
So I feel like, so I have that we voted to approve the expenditures of that full amount that included this scholarship.
Thinking back on it, this is the group that maintains their own, like, they maintain a separate kind of expenditure account,
Mhm.
right? That they kind of use just because they often have operational needs that are very time sensitive and they can't
Mm.
be forced to wait for us, or that it just wouldn't work for their kind of stated purpose. So, Julia, is this where they had made these requests, or they had told us about this and we okayed a disbursement to them and they should be paying these stipends?
So we approve new disbursements being requested for fiscal year 24 and 25 at 8,100 per year. Commissioner Scalia confirmed with the folks from DBAC that each year's sum included the one scholarship of 1,000 that DBAC awarded each year. So I believe we approved it. And
We
so
approved a disbursement to
the
them.
amount of money, but not necessarily, I mean, there was no person identified to receive the scholarship.
Mhm. But my question is more, did we approve a disbursement of the whole amount to them and then it's their responsibility to then pay it, as opposed to them now asking us to pay it?
Mhm.
Are the, are the funds just in one account? Like, it wasn't like we dispersed from an account that we need to approve to then a separate account that they have control over, or
No,
is
I think they do.
they already have control over the account?
I think they have their own operating account,
Okay,
and we make a disbursement every so often, and it had been kind of in arrears because they have spending needs that kind of come up urgently.
yeah,
That's
so there
kind of
are
their
two
business.
separate accounts, like the fund account and then like this operating account?
This is
I'm
school
not sure I
side,
understand.
so this is family held. You don't have to sign off on it.
This $1,000.
This $1,000 is a family held scholarship.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we approve the money going to them, and then they approve the expenditure of the 1,000 for this scholarship.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's to your point.
So should we tear this up? Like, we just don't need to sign it?
This is the stipend.
Yeah, it's that one.
Oh,
It turns out, even though they say,
I think it's
have
more
the commissioners
informational.
approve,
mm-hmm.
we shouldn't have to approve.
Yeah, because it falls within the
Yeah.
other disbursement. Okay.
Then why did they reach out to us?
I think it's just been their practice.
Okay.
It seems like that's been their practice, is to just keep the town informed. I don't know exactly. They may consider it. Even though it's family held, it could be. It could have gone through the commissioners in the past.
Okay, so we approved the stipend, but we don't need to do anything with the scholarship.
I don't think so.
That's what it sounds like.
It's what it sounds
And in
like.
any event, we don't have the letter that we don't have the scholarship letter that this cover letter is referencing, so.
Attach this letter. Alright, so, I don't know if you have to vote or make a motion to accept. We're saying that these scholarships were already accepted in January for the schools, so therefore, we do not have to make a motion, correct?
Mhm.
Alright,
Oh, we signed it.
I'm just saying for these scholarships for the school. I just was kind of doing my due diligence and having the signed copy, so we have like proof that it was
Mhm.
approved. But I don't know if in addition to this, you also need to make a motion.
Sorry, I'm not following. A motion for what?
The motion,
To just release the funds, right?
yeah, basically,
Well, we
I
signed
feel
off.
like when we signed
Okay.
off on the amounts,
it's okay.
this is just a report to us so we know who got them. But we had already approved the amounts.
Mhm.
Okay, all right.
And let us know if it turns out that
Yeah.
this backs
I
you in
won't
some
wait till
sort of
September.
corner. Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
contact
yeah,
everyone,
sure.
yeah. The school will definitely let me know if I've done
Yeah,
anything amiss,
yeah.
so. Okay. I think that's.
Great.
All right.
everything from my side.
So then the next meeting is September 8th,
Yep,
4:30.
Should we schedule October?
sure.
I am gonna be out of the country the entire month of October,
Oh, wow.
kind of in a remote location in like Gabon, Africa. So that might be tough for me to join.
It's not, 2 is sufficient.
Yeah,
1 is not sufficient.
I'll do my best, but I'm, yeah,
Okay.
likely,
And if we meet at 4:30 in the afternoon,
it's like
that's
10:30 or
later.
midnight or whatever.
Very cool.
But yeah, you guys go ahead and schedule.
What about Monday, the 20th? October 20th?
Just give me one
Oh,
second.
town meeting.
Oh,
Okay,
that's town meeting, so we rule that date out.
Yep. So,
Monday, October 6th?
Sure.
4:30? That works for you, Julia, does that work for
I
you?
think so. When's the holiday? The next Monday?
Yes, the
Okay.
13th.
So sure, 4:30 on the 6th.
30 on the 6th. All right. Okay.
Okay,
All right, motion to adjourn.
second.
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Okay.